Thanks for tuning in to Stark Reality. Financial empowerment on the road to personal freedom. My name is Gregory Starks. I'm your host. And we hope and pray that you get something out of this episode of Stark Reality. Thank you. Yo, what's up? All right, so thank you for joining me. This is another installment of Stark Reality. You're gonna have to bear with me today because I don't like looking at the at the camera very much. Video, not my cup of soup. Always don't like doing it that much. But this time I'm gonna do a video because I didn't prepare ahead of time because I can't quite focus right now. I'm talking about financial stuff and talking about self-empowerment and financial building because it kind of seems minuscule this week or over the last week or so. It kind of seems irrelevant for a little while. If we're living in a world where we don't understand where it's going to go from here, the money, the financial stability, it doesn't mean as much because we haven't changed the world that we live in so that we can enjoy it. You get distracted by so much that's going on in the world. Like right now, I'm distracted by the Derek Chauvin thing. I'm distracted by the shooting of Dante Wright. I'm distracted by pepper spraying of a military personnel, of a soldier in his car at a gas station. I'm distracted by the impact of drugs and then eventually what takes DMX, all that he contributed of his self over the last couple of decades. The fact that he was kind of living his life publicly and sharing all his trials and tribulations. It seems like real life is more important than talking about the other aspects of life to me right now. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but for me right now, it's hard for me to focus on talking about finance and stuff like that. I mean, I had it in my mind want to talk about what's going on as far as the credit bureaus. Joe Biden is trying to eliminate credit bureaus because they don't act fairly. In addition to that, student loans, that's always up for debate. The possibility of wiping out people's student loans, and these are topics that I'm probably still going to touch. But it's kind of difficult for me to focus right now when I look at this issue in regards to Dante Wright. Dante Wright, if for those who don't know, was stopped in Minnesota on a traffic stop. They said that he had a warrant outstanding. Subsequently, he was shot in his car for trying to run away. This in the same state where Derek Chauvin is on trial for last year standing on the back of George Floyd and causing his potential death. All at the same time this is going on. It almost seems like we're at a point where, like, every year we're going through the same thing. Even like when springtime hits, it seems like people have got a reason to go out and protest. Why people have a reason to go out in the streets. Um, for this thing to keep on occurring, these things keep on occurring over and over and over again. And it doesn't seem like there's any punishment for anybody who does anything in regards to killing innocent people or going outside of their scope and basically taking justice into their own hands and deciding that these people should be executed. And then the gall that all these people, they got cameras on, they got these body cameras, and then the audacity to still go ahead and do it even with the body cameras. Like, I was watching the George Floyd trial, and every cop has a camera on, and you can get the audio and the video from everything, and they still had the audacity to treat a human being that way. I mean, when I looked at that video, those videos, because they got so many of them, when you look at those videos and you see it so many times, the one thing that sticks out in my head was when they originally took him out of his vehicle and they handcuffed him, and then they sat him down on the wall, like outside the store, and he had this look on his face of pure agony, of begging and pleading, I'm a good guy, please, I'm a good guy. For him to be treated that way over what seems to be $20. Nothing. I mean, it's like you don't even need a real reason. Not to say that if it was over $20 million, it'd be different, that you treat somebody differently. But you do also see that people who get over on people for larger amounts of money don't get killed. They rarely get jail time or anything. I mean, and if it is jail time or prison time, it's what they call it, club fed type stuff. So to see this kind of mistreatment to people, I can't focus on other stuff. I can't focus on talking about student debt and credit and stuff like that, because that which affects the world that I live in is more important right now, and I just can't ignore it at this point. So right now, Derek Chauvin is on trial for killing George Floyd. At this point of this recording, the defense has not made their case yet. The prosecution has made their case, presented their witnesses, made their statements. Those witnesses have been cross-examined by the defense, and in the coming days, the defense is going to make their case of why Derek Chauvin should not be convicted of the murder or manslaughter of George Floyd. It seems to be like the prosecution has an open and shut case. It's hard in any way to justify why Derek Chauvin chose to act in the way he did. It's hard to look at this situation and say that George Floyd was the cause of his own death. It's hard at this situation and this juncture to say that the medical issues that he had been dealing with caused him to die, and not any of the activity that took place on that day. It's hard to justify the actions of a man who seems to have no regard for this man's health, for this man's comfort, for this man's human rights, to stand on him, to stand on his neck and put his knee on his neck for such a long period of time and really not feel anything for it, not even care. I thought the defense was really lame in regards to, because all they did was bring up methamphetamine. Was it fentanyl? That's all they did. It was really lame. It was really boring for them to keep on repeating the same thing over and over again, because they don't have a case at all. This has got to be the one where things start to go the other direction, because if you look at the case that Derek Chauvin doesn't have a case, his lawyer is lost. His lawyer doesn't know what to say. He's got nothing at this point. I don't know what he can say, once they start giving their witnesses. I don't know, maybe they'll say that George Floyd had health issues, but it looks like all those things have been debunked already. So those aren't even going to matter that much. It may not even, it seems like me, it shouldn't even come into play. But it looks like that's the only defense they have. His training does not teach him to do that from the academy. So, the police department protocols don't defend his actions of what he did. But like I said, this has to be the one where everything kind of turns around. This has to be the one where, when you look at the Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, the Michael Brown, the Eric Gardner, when you look at all these cases over this last probably 10 or 12 years or so, when you look at all this and you grab it in its totality, you look and no justice has ever been served. And Joe Biden likes to say that he talked to George Floyd's daughter and said, "My daddy's going to change the world." That might be a very prolific statement coming from possibly a child. I don't know how old his daughter is, but the way he kind of presented it sounded like maybe she was a child and she said that. But this has to be the one where everything turns around, because if it doesn't, I don't know where we go from here, because all of America is watching. But then the thing that kind of gives me pause is, even while all of America is watching, you look at a situation with Dante Wright and he gets killed, and the officer says, "I made a mistake and I grabbed the gun instead of the taser. And I didn't know I shot the gun instead I shot the taser. I didn't know I shot the gun. I was being to shoot the taser." A police officer can't tell the difference between their gun and their taser. From what I remember of tasers, they're bright yellow. You can't miss them, usually. I don't know what this officer's taser looked like, but if it was black and it felt like a gun, then maybe you can make that mistake. It doesn't seem plausible. It also seems almost disrespectful to have that level of negligence and think that makes everything cool. The officer was meaning to deploy a stun apparatus instead of a gun, but they pulled the gun out, held the gun, and then shot the person with the gun. Then realized, oh, I shot you with the gun and not the taser. Even screaming taser while you're holding the gun. It's a high level of disrespect for the intelligence of the people. I wouldn't go and even try to get into the psyche of why police officers see need to kill black people and only black people. Like, people look at it like, oh, well, the police are victimizing everybody. Yeah, but this kind of stuff doesn't happen to everybody. If there are examples out there of unarmed unarmed non-black individuals that get killed on traffic stops, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see the data on that. I'd like to see the white version of the Dante Wright case. I'd like to see the white version of the George Floyd. I'd like to see the Hispanic version of Sandra Bland. A person can make any argument they want to, but for them to have the audacity while the trial is still going on for Derek Chauvin on the George Floyd case. If you remember last year, like, the whole country was out in the streets, amid a pandemic. Pandemic or not, everybody, well, not everybody, but people in all cities all across America were sick of it at the same time. I've never seen that happen before. I've never seen so many people in uproar over the death of an individual. I had never seen it. I mean, it was probably Martin Luther King probably didn't get that many people that came out when he died. As many as came out when George Floyd was killed. But even with that, this woman still has. How can you still let this happen where you shoot a person? You would think that at some point it's like, all right, we got to stop shooting people for a little while until things cool off. But in springtime, things are hot. It's really hot. And it seems like everybody is just emboldened to commit these heinous acts against black people. But like I said, it's hard to focus on anything else outside of that. So right now I got some video footage that I'm going to play. This is footage of the press conference. They had a press conference. They showed the shooting from the video camera of the officer, and then they're going to answer some questions. So here that goes.
A taser deployment will be imminent. During this encounter, however, the officer drew their handgun instead of their taser. For informational purposes, we train with our handguns on our dominant side and our taser on our weak side. So if you're right-handed, you carry your firearm on your right side and you carry your taser on the left. This is done purposefully and is trained. As I watch the video and listen to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. This appears to me, from what I viewed and the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, that this was an accidental discharge that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Wright.
Now, I don't know about too much distress. I didn't see that. She did look like she didn't know that she shot the person or that she had the gun. I was like, oh my God, I shot him. She said, oh, I shot him. So I don't know about distress. Maybe he saw something I didn't afterwards.
To conduct an independent investigation into the shooting and death. Once they are completed, I expect they will submit their findings, independent of me, to the appropriate authorities, the appropriate attorneys that will look and review this case. I'm also stressing that I do hope for the community to be patient and allow this criminal investigation, to be completed as thoroughly as possible. I believe Mr. Wright deserves this, as do all involved.
Now, when he says, I believe Mr. Wright deserved this, it seems like that's like secondary. It seems like he's mainly talking about, I don't know, maybe he's just trying to defend the police department, since he's the chief of it. So maybe he's just trying to defend the police department and still try to maintain a level of fairness, possibly.
The officer is currently on administrative leave. Make a short comment about what happened last night to our community, a community that I've been a part of for 27 years. I've seen some of the worst damage to this city I've ever seen in those years. Again, peaceful protesting, expressing yourself, we fully support that. But the ravaging of our businesses, the looting of our stores, the destruction to our pharmacies, we cannot tolerate that. I'm hoping that the community will have this level of transparency and know that this is being investigated by the correct authorities, which is the BCA. Unfortunately, they're not here today, but they are handling the investigation. And I have very little information besides what I've just given to you because they are handling that investigation. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments you want to make?
So this is a very galling situation for this officer to, the sheriff or chief of police, the chief to kind of insult your intelligence in this manner to say, I believe that because of the amount of distress that the officer was in, I don't think they did it on purpose. I think it was an accident. Wow. To have the nerve to say something like that. And as the interview goes further, they ask him questions, which I'll play that part too.
All right, so we're going to open it up for questions, but I just want to reiterate that, obviously this is deeply tragic, and we're going to do everything that we can to ensure justice is done, to ensure that our communities are made whole. And with respect to the events last night, obviously there were folks in our community who were grieving, who showed up initially at the location where Dante Rice was killed, and we're gathering. And
okay, so right here, Mr. Mayor is talking about how he instituted a curfew, probably for the safety. I guess people were more than likely protesting. And so more likely they put a curfew in place, looks like from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning, because the people are taken to the street.
And obviously later on, as the night went on and unfolded, there were a series of events that led to an escalation in the protest later on into the evening. Later on, I did issue a curfew, which was in place until 6 a.m. this morning, to ensure that we're taking steps to keep the community safe. We do want to emphasize that we believe strongly in people's rights to gather and to express their grievance and to protest. That is a fundamental American right, and we're going to protect that right. And at the same time, we're going to also work to protect the safety of our community. And so we'll now open it up for questions.
It's going to be sent over to the Hennepin County Attorney's Office for possible charges.
Chief, it's far too early to know which authority is going to be prosecuting, if it's their prosecution. So I don't know how that's going to play out. Unfortunately, the BCA normally is present here during these types of conferences. But what I've understood is the releasing of video this early in a situation is not something that they condone. They leave it up to me to do that. And as I decided to do that, they're not part of this conversation. They're not part of this press conference at this time.
Why did you decide to do this?
I felt the community needed to know what happened. They needed to see it. I needed to be transparent. And I wanted to be forthright. I had due respect to Dante as well.
Chief, can you talk about what led to the traffic stop? Dante Wright's mother told reporters he had his air freshener hanging off his rear view mirror.
From what I've understood from the public safety briefing, there was an expired registration on the vehicle. That means the tabs were expired. Upon arrival, when the officer made contact, I think at that time when he walked up to the car, he discovered that there was a hanging item from the rearview mirror. So there was a contact that the officer went up there initially for, obtained his ID or his driver, his name, and he walked back to his car, and at that time he ran his name and he found out that he needed a warrant. That's why they were moving from the car and they were making a custodial arrest.
Can you tell us more about the warrants?
I have very little information on the warrant other than it was a gross misdemeanor warrant.
Dante's brother tells us his brother didn't know he had a warrant for his arrest and recently missed meeting with his probation officer.
That I don't know.
So there's a perception, I think in the US and around the world, that had Dante White been my colour, this wouldn't have happened to him. Why is it that police officers in the United States keep killing young black men and young black women far, far, far higher rate than they do white people?
I don't have an answer to that question.
Real. Because black man is real here in the state of Minnesota. I can answer that question.
Was there a gun found in the car?
There's no gun that I was made aware of. I did not search the car, but I've not been made aware of a gun in the vehicle.
The officer, is she under any type of
There has been
mental evaluation?
There has been a fair amount of social chatter in media, which I don't normally comment on, but there was some comments in social media that she had committed suicide. That is not true. That is not true. To the best of my knowledge, she's being taken care of right now.
What can you tell us about this officer and how long she's been with the department?
At this point in time, I don't have that. I will not release that information. That should be released very shortly, though. I believe the BCA has a system in place where they'll be releasing the names of all parties involved and also all their training records and all that information as far as tenure and seniority. That'll be released shortly.
And Henry Odyssey, again, do you plan to step down if people call for your resignation after the actions outside of this police department last night?
At this point, I do not.
Chief, what was happening then? What are we seeing in the video prior to the shot? You described the taser and the weapons. What was happening there?
I'm not in the mind of the officer. I can only see what you're all seeing. I can couple that with some of the training much of the training that I've received, and that's why I'm believing it to be an accidental discharge.
But prior to that, there was some sort of activity going on. When they were trying to take him to custody?
It appeared to me from the video that the individual was trying to get back into his car to leave.
Chief, how often do officers go through firearm training to try and maybe prevent something like that happening where you don't make that kind of mistake? Is it annual training or is it, how does that work?
We have numerous trainings throughout the year. We don't try to lump it all in one group, so there's numerous trainings where we do tactical training, we do firearms training, we do taser deployments. We have pretty thorough taser requalifications on a yearly basis, but then we also do a number of scenarios and role-playing exercises as well. I can take one more question, please.
We're in the midst of a pandemic. Why was it a priority to pull someone over for expired tax?
And I don't know if that was a priority, but it was a violation that the officer observed and initiated a traffic stop.
Chief, are you aware that there's a significant delay? Are you aware that there's a significant delay in getting tabs and things of this nature from the DMV? So even people who have purchased tabs are unable to get them because there's a 2 to 3 month backlog. Are you aware of that? And is your staff also aware of that? And have you made any type of recommendations to your staff to be mindful that we're in the middle of a pandemic and don't pull people over for tabs, particularly because there is a significant delay in getting those tabs from the Department of Motor Vehicles? Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that.
Police.
I am aware of that.
Is your staff aware of that?
Yes, they are.
Chief.
That was the last question. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor, may I ask you, in that video, the female officer
I ain't even get it.
That's my knowledge. She's being taken care of right now.
Why is it?
When he walked, they're not. And at the same time, unfortunately, the BCA normally is present here during these. The safety of our community. In
Okay, so that kind of went long. See if I can finish. See if I can clear this up. All right. So yeah, that went kind of long, but it shows the entire statements by the chief of police, and tells you where his head is at, where he's coming from. Later on the next day, the next night, there was a military force of sorts in regards to the police. Tanks, Humvees, the usual SWAT, to deal with the protesting. But ultimately, we're in a state of unknown. We don't know where we're going as a country. This could be a turning point in the right direction. It could be a turning point in the wrong direction. This was not handled well to start with, though, so you can understand where these people are coming from with their disdain and with they feel like they're being disrespected. So I've already gone kind of long, and I'll probably continue on what the aftermath of this on my next episode of Stark Reality. But I've already gone long, but I want to say thank you for tuning in, and open up your minds, open up your hearts. Always think smart, always try to stay ahead of the game. But that concludes this episode, and thank you for joining me. Goodbye.